The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Blessed New Year to you. Welcome to Faith Without Borders. I am your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. It is indeed a joy for me to welcome you into this new year that certainly has already turned tumultuous. We left it in a crazy way, and I know a lot of us are asking, did 2020 really leave us? Is it really gone? Well, it is, and 2021 is here, and so much has already happened in the first 10 days of this year. But here we are, and so glad to be on with you again for our experiences and our journey on this progressive and prophetic platform called Faith Without Borders, where we seek to invite thought leaders to see how we can engage in thought-provoking and solutions-driven dialogue and conversation around the critical issues facing the United States and indeed the world. We are emanating from South Los Angeles, the Morris Media Studios, and so glad for our ongoing partnership right here, in South LA, and joining and connecting with so many of you around the city, county, state, nation, and indeed the world. Certainly, a lot of us have seen a lot that's been going on these last couple of days in the United States. We are dealing with multiple crises. Of course, we want to lift up both appreciation yet deep concern around COVID-19 and its impact on sisters and brothers around the country and around the world. Appreciation to all of our healthcare workers on the front lines and everyone else, our essential workers that are making sure that we have our basic needs cared for. We continue to lift them up and pray for their protection as we anticipate a surge upon a surge, and with this new variant, looks like another surge with a delay, of getting vaccines into the arms of folk and a strategic distribution, activities. So we just want to lift all of that up. So appreciation, concern, intercession, and condolences to so many who've been affected and impacted by COVID-19. We want to share with you that we do still have the power in our hands to see how we can, stop the rise in both infections and deaths and flatten that curve. It's all about our behavior. The scientists, our medical professionals are doing what they need to do. We would want to urge you to do what you need to do so that we can play our part in terms of engaging in those three W's, which is simply washing our hands. That's what our parents taught us, right? Watching our distance, that's very important, of course. And then around wearing our masks. That's not a political statement. I believe it is a statement of love for self and love for neighbor. And I hope that we will continue to live into that and live up to it as we press on towards that. And then, of course, we're dealing in the United States with a crisis, of democracy, given the failed insurrection that took place this past Wednesday on January the 6th, where there was a riot, kicked off by Donald Trump, and that riot then, moved, of course, to the state capitol, and we've all seen the disturbing images, and we will get into that. The double standards in terms of the response, what does this mean, the implications of it, and all that went down on January the 6th. We do not want to miss also what happened on January the 6th, the historic elections that took place in Georgia, when, of course, we've had just the election of, two Democratic senators out of Georgia. So Georgia did not just turn blue as a state, but now Georgia also, has elected the first, African American, senator, to the U.S. Congress, and that is Senator Raphael Warnock, as well as the son of Jewish immigrants, John Ossoff, the youngest. I believe that the last time we had a senator elected so young was when President-elect Joe Biden was elected from Delaware. So John Ossoff, is that senator for us right now. We're looking forward to getting into that, and that's what we're going to kick off with today, just to have some conversation about that, look at the implications of it, and have with me my good friend and brother from Atlanta, Georgia, and that is Pastor Monty Norwood, who is the senior pastor at the Bible Way Ministries International. He was intricately involved, in this campaign, as well as the organizing and the mobilizing as part of his prophetic work in that community. Not only is he a pastor, he is also a community leader, as well as a professor at the Beulah Seminary. So we're having a person who's doing deep reflection, but also engaged, in dynamic action, prophetic action, both in his congregation and in his community. Happy New Year, Pastor Norwood. It's so good to see you and have you. And there he is. Good to see you, my brother. How are you?
New Year.
Yes. How are you doing? How's the family? And,
Real well. We're blessed. Thank you for asking. How are you and your family?
Good. Thank you. We crossed over. We're trying to make it through and getting adjusted, to 2021. Happy birthday. I know in
Thank
your
you.
household, you all celebrated 2 critical birthdays there.
We did.
Yes.
Thank you so
So
much.
we want to say happy birthday
Thank you.
to Sister Norwood
Yes.
and to you, I believe, right?
Yes, she was on the 4th. I was on the 5th.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Yeah.
So y'all
yeah.
had what, a 24, 48-hour socially distanced jam session?
That's a good way to put it. One rolls into the other.
Yeah. So that's great, man. It's good to see you. I know the last time we talked, we were on the other side of this election, and we basically just really we were engaged in some prophetic, conversation and thinking and strategies around this. Well, here it is. It has happened. Georgia, pulled us through, and I'm telling you, it was a nail biter, and a lot of us from around the country, and let me just let you know, folk from around the world have been glued
Yes.
to their screens to kind of see what the outcome was going to be, and
hmm
we would not want to let, you see, what happened in D.C. overshadow what
Yes.
happened in Atlanta. That's very, very important. And so I posted, a Facebook post, to the effect that, in light of the darkness that took place in Washington D.C., light emanated, from Atlanta, and
Yes.
that's what it's about. It was also Epiphany, which for us
Yes.
in the Protestant, version of Christianity, celebrates light,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the arrival of the Magi,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
so one can look at this from so many different, angles.
Yes.
Let me just ask you for your, thoughts, around what has happened, and what's the mood in your household, your congregation, your community, and the state of Georgia.
I love the connections you're making, all of the comparisons and connecting the dots, Christianity and otherwise. First of all, I want to take a minute to say thank you, Reverend Kelvin Sauls, for your engagement on your program, your advocacy. I certainly know that you are all in your audience, and I'm glad that you referenced the global audience. We certainly had national and global engagement and participation, boots on the ground, minutes and money and contribution. Someone has said that money is the mother's milk of politics. This was perhaps the most expensive Senate runoff race in history. So I don't want to take for granted, my brother, that you have been there, not just with your prayers, but in a very tangible way. So I want to give you a shout out and say thank you. And having said that, we are euphoric, we are excited, we are grateful and thankful for the outcome of the historic double runoff race in the state of Georgia, where we have now historically elected the first African American senator from the state of Georgia, the first Jewish American senator from the state of Georgia. Our church was approached by Ossoff's campaign to participate in an advertisement for him due to a connection through you, Reverend Sauls, through Amar Kennedy and our connection with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. So again, thank you for your engagement, your participation. As a pastor, I certainly know Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock. He's spoken at Beulah Heights University, where I teach. We are aware of him. We are grateful for the groundswell of support throughout the state. The record numbers of Black voters who came back for a runoff election. We historically have not come back to vote in runoff elections. And I do think the events of Wednesday are connected with the election of Tuesday. The two senators who were defeated, the two Republican senators, had not yet conceded either race, though they were beaten handily and decisively beyond the measure of recount. But as the events of Wednesday in the nation's capital unfolded, they both conceded their races, and Senator Kelly Loeffler actually changed her position on voting against certifying the electoral vote. So I think the events were elected, but as you said, we don't want to skip over the significance and the magnitude. It was certainly a seismic shift here in the state of Georgia. We have had issues around every issue you can think about: education, voting rights, civil rights, that you can name. We have lagged, we have straggled. This state has been called a red state, but the blue tsunami that began with the presidential election on November 3rd continued because of the prayers and the push of the people from around the world, from across this nation, and certainly from this state. Our congregation is euphoric. We were all ready to begin a new Bible study this past Wednesday, but we changed our format and had a member of our congregation to lead, along with myself, a discussion which garnered a great amount of engagement and participation. People wanted to talk about what had happened, the victory, but not just that, they wanted to talk about what happens now. And certainly part of that is continued engagement and vigilance to hold accountable every elected official in every office. So there's excitement, yes, but now that there's a song that says, now that we found love, what are we going to do with it? So now that we have victory, what will we do? And certainly decisions have to be made starting Monday about consequences for the insurrection. What will the new Congress do? What will the new president do? What can we expect? So
Yeah.
those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, and the whole piece, about now that we found victory, what are we going to do,
Yep.
speaks to just the importance of ongoing engagement.
Hmm.
You actually, as always, enlightened me by saying that you know at least Senator-elect Warnock will
Hmm.
only serve for 2 years. Then he has to, because he
Yes.
has to complete a current term, right?
Yeah.
And then
Correct.
he has to run again. So
Yes.
2 years in political terms ain't that long. In an
Not
election
long at
cycle
all.
ain't that
Not
long.
long at all.
So that whole piece around engagement, we know that voter suppression is real, in Georgia. I mean, the
Yes.
governor is in there
Yes.
as a result of
Yes.
strategic voter suppression, right, and the
Hmm.
elimination of
Yes.
people off the rolls. So that is just such a huge challenge still for us. But the ground game, of course, due to the work of Stacey Abrams and so many,
Yes.
of our folk, especially our black women, are at the
Yes.
forefront doing a tremendous, work around that. Black vote matters, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just talk a little bit about, how do we invite folk to stay woke so that we don't go asleep on this now, because we know that, folk are already, organizing to see how they
Hmm.
can resist, what was accomplished, on
Hmm.
um, January the 6th. So
So
your thoughts on just how we, now that we found this love, right, this victory, this opportunity, how do we stay engaged in both both a resistance way and a reimagination way, as we move forward?
we've got to stay woke. We've got to stay woke at all costs. I'm glad that you mentioned Stacey Abrams. She is a shero. She is a heroine. It cannot be minimized, the magnificent role that she and Black women in particular have played. I've seen a lot of memes on social media from Black women saying, "Thank you that we saved you again, but don't just thank us, hire us and pay us, et cetera, et cetera." So I think that we need more Stacey Abrams. You're very insightful, Reverend Sauls. We do have voter suppression still going on in the state of Georgia. We have a Republican Secretary of State. That's the person tasked with counting the votes. And though you have seen some public conversations with him standing up to the president about finding these 11,000 or so votes, that same sitting Republican Secretary of State is proposing legislation, and the Republican controlled legislation, legislation, legislation in the state of Georgia are proposing to take away opportunities for absentee voting
Right.
in a
Yes.
time of a pandemic. So that is still going on. And so we have to fight that. We have to bring attention to that. We have to stand up against that. We have to lobby for legislation at the federal level, at the state level, that will guard against taking away people's right to vote. So we have to stay woke at all costs. I think that the role that Stacey Abrams played, we need to expand. She is still on the airwaves here, encouraging people who voted by absentee to make sure that your vote was counted, to teaching us the process of following up to certify that your vote was received and counted, because she understands, as you said, that 2 years in political terms is a very short amount of time. And for those who don't understand why Reverend Warnock will have to run again in 2 years, uh, one of Georgia's two U.S. senators, Johnny Isaacson, actually resigned from his term for health reasons. And it was the Republican governor of our state who appointed Kelly Loeffler as his replacement. Kelly then had to run for the remainder of his term, two
Mm-hmm.
years. And that's when Reverend Warnock, now in the runoff, has defeated her.
Mm-hmm.
So he will fulfill the final 2 years of the former Senator Johnny Isaacson's term. Then he must run, as you said, in 2 years for the complete 6-year term. And so the battle is not over. You can expect the same kind of resources and battle that went forth here, mudslinging, damning him, the Black church, his ministry, dragging Jeremiah Wright into it, dragging him into it, quoting his sermons, just an attack on us as a people, on the Black church, the Black prophetic tradition. You can expect all of that over again. So I'm going to keep my foot on the gas. I'm going
Yeah.
to do everything in my power as an activist, as a pastor, as a public intellectual, as a professor, partnering with you, those on the ground here, to keep our eyes on the prize and to know that we don't have any permanent victories. We don't have any permanent parties. We don't have any permanent friends, only permanent interests, and those interests do not cease. We got to stay woke.
Yeah, I really love you bringing up that whole piece about permanent interest because that is so key. I want to put up a picture of Senator-elect Warnock and the quote that he used in his acceptance speech that I thought just speaks to the historic nature, of this
Yeah,
election, of his election. The other day, because this is America,
yeah.
the 82-year-old hands that used to pick someone else's cotton went to the
Yeah.
polls and picked her younger son to be a United States senator. You
That
know,
is a great quote.
I mean, it's just so profound, in terms of just, the stone that the builder refused now clearly has become the cornerstone, right? In
Yeah.
terms of how it is that we really secure this democracy and keep it safe,
Mm-hmm.
especially in light of what happened on Wednesday, which is what I want to transition to, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just your thoughts around just the whole insurrection
Mm-hmm.
piece that took place. How did this play out? Because I mean, you guys were in the thrones of the thrones of elections, right? And
Yeah.
counting and watching the numbers and all of that, and then of course we were distracted by
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't know how it played, in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
We were in touch. I of course was in touch with you and several other folk, in
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, because
Mm-hmm.
we are concerned about safety and just these militias and these
Mm-hmm.
pop-up,
Mm-hmm.
resection, insurrection activities. Just your thoughts around just the blatant violation, of that citadel of democracy called, the U.S. Capitol.
It had been brewing since the Garden of Eden, since the inception of this nation, which has enslavement in its DNA, racism, prejudice, and bias. It has been unfolding for the last 4 years of this presidential term. It had been unfolding for weeks and days prior to it happening through parlor, through communications from even official state actors. It had been unfolding when the mayor of DC asked for the National Guard and was refused. It was unfolding when the Capitol Police were offered assistance from the FBI and other agencies and refused it. And it happened almost according to script, according to plan. It was an insurrection. It was incredible. It was horrible. And what will be more incredible and horrible is if there are no consequences and no one held to account, and particularly the current sitting resident of the White House. I thought it was not an accident, to try to be very clear with what I'm saying. It was not happenstance. It was not coincidence. I thought it was planned and coordinated. I think that the depth and the level of horror has yet to fully unfold. They had bombs, they had hanging gallows, they had zip ties, they had planned a full insurrection to literally slay, take the lives of legislators. People like Nancy Pelosi, this current Speaker of the House, had a price on her head. So this was serious, and it was fomented by the sitting resident of the White House. And so, as incredible and horror and as plain in your face as it was, insurrection, mutiny, treason, I think the greater harm will be for there to be no accountability. And that's what the tension will be beginning Monday. And I think there has to be accountability because we keep saying no one is above the law, but we have not demonstrated or shown that to this point. This has been done in the light of day. The world has seen it. We have seen it, and we have seen it over and over. And to quote Fannie Lou Hamer, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yes, and certainly the world has seen this, and I mean, I received, communication from home. People asking, well, where are you? Are you in L.A. or in D.C.? What's going on? Are you okay? And so yes, people were watching this live because
Yeah.
the U.S. Has this export machinery of its culture and its and
Mm-hmm.
information, right? Well, now folk can see live what's going down, over here. And I mean, people actually planned watch parties around watching, what was going down, on Capitol Hill because they wanted to, also follow, the arguments being made and the count, of the electoral college certification of, that count. So it was just amazing in terms of, how people were watching this, but they watching it because, this whole challenge of white nationalism, and the dehumanization and otherization, of black people and other people, of color. I mean, really, this deep sense of anti-blackness,
Mm-hmm.
is not just a U.S. challenge.
Yes.
It's happening around the world. So I
Yes.
said to our folk, y'all got to get ready, because the conservative white folk in South Africa, they've always taken notes, from the U.S. The planning, implementation, and management of apartheid was a handbook straight, from the
Mm-hmm.
United States. All of the pillars of apartheid, was just adapted from the United States. A day or so ago, there were pro-Trump protests in New Zealand. Out of all
Wow.
people. So this is a global
Wow.
threat, to it. And at the heart of this, Pastor Norwood, is real. This is also this is not just a political, movement. We have to be honest, clear,
Mm-hmm.
upfront. That this is also a spiritual movement, white
Mm-hmm.
Anglo-Saxon Protestant theology that undergirds, white nationalism,
Mm-hmm.
is at play here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The domestication and the colonization of
Mm-hmm.
who God is and what Jesus is about.
Mm-hmm.
The whitenization of Jesus and Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And its manipulation into,
Yeah.
Roman Greco culture, and then that being exported,
Mm-hmm.
through, the Puritans, that landed, on these shores, and the Calvinists, which landed, on the tip of Africa, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
from. So let's just, I mean, talk a little bit about that, because you are in the Bible Belt,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the question becomes, if it's the Bible Belt, then what Bible are folk reading that justifies, using, Bible Christianity just as ongoing justification, for anti-blackness, for the
Mm-hmm.
dehumanization, and otherization, of folk, and how do we, speak to that as people of faith? Because clearly,
Mm-hmm.
it has become a threat, to not just people's lives, but indeed to democracy itself.
I think that as a practicing systematic theologian, I argue that the American church is apostate, that it is actually not a church. And I'm speaking of mainstream evangelicals, the largest denomination in the world are the Southern Baptists, and they have a current rage going on within the church world, within the Southern Baptist circles, about critical race theory, where the six presidents of their six largest seminaries have issued a joint statement disavowing critical race theory, to which many Black pastors within the Southern Baptist Convention have resigned and left their academic programs. One of the most high profile being Reverend Dr. Ralph West, Church Without Walls in Houston, Texas. And so I say all of that to say I consider them apostate hypocritical and antithetical to authentic New Testament Christianity because it is another gospel. They have hijacked the message of the gospel. What they teach and preach and practice is not good news. It is a redoubling of their efforts at a hierarchy that places everything and everyone beneath them, where they have put race above everything and everybody else. So I think we have to tell that, we have to confront that, we have to speak truth to power, we have to not be afraid of the prophetic utterance that calls them to account, as men in our tradition have done. You've done it, Reverend Sauls, very eloquently. Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, uh, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock. I do it. All of us must use our voices, our platforms, our sphere of influence to call this out. Jesus was very clear in terms of the message of liberation in his inaugural sermon in Luke chapter 4, and to his message that it is to the least of these. And so they preach, teach, and practice another gospel. It is not biblical, it is not authentic. We have to call it out.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I mean, we cannot help but even connect this, way back to, work of individuals such as, Frank Schaeffer,
Yes.
and that then, gets picked up, by, individuals like Ralph Reed,
Yes.
et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, the Christian right,
Mm-hmm.
which is the, you know, the Christian version or justification of the alt right. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Around that, and so that is just all these connections just has to be made, and that now
Mm-hmm.
gets played out in so many, of our, conservative evangelical white, congregations, and let's just be clear now, a lot of conservative black evangelical pastors, they've picked this up,
That's true. That's
and
true.
let's be further clear that has been exported,
Yeah.
to, the Southern Hemisphere,
Yes.
initially, of course, by way of, you know, missionary work, or as I call it, mercenary work, right, as a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
precursor for colonization. And now, it continues by way, of the airwaves,
Mm-hmm.
as a precursor, to imperialism, and trickle down, economics, which is the economic, version, of prosperity gospel,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
we just gotta connect all these dots,
Mm-hmm.
as we deal, with this. I want to bring up just the response of law enforcement because,
Yeah.
clearly we are in an unequal justice system, right? That we are unequal under the law, and that is a fact. And if anybody has any concern about that, just look at the response of the Capitol Police. While we appreciate, what some of them, did, and we
Mm-hmm.
extend condolences to the lives that were lost,
Yes.
on that particular day. We ought not to make no mistake,
Mm-hmm.
around the appearance of compliance, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and coordination that took place on that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
To that response, I put out, on, Facebook, that disparity, in law enforcement, is a direct threat to any democracy.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of that, your thoughts just around that, and the response to other protests such as that, of Black Lives Matter, or the immigration marches that we've been a part of, and other marches, including with Dr. King, right back to what happened. Just the response was so vicious, right, and so violent, if you will. Your thoughts just on the disparity in law enforcement that took place on, or that was displayed, on January the 6th around that insurrection.
I think it is stark, it is striking, it is tragic And I do select those words carefully and intentionally. It was stark in that it was on display for the world to see. Many in and out of law enforcement, in and out of government, have articulated the glaring, despairing difference in treatment just from this summer from Black Lives Matter. President elect Joe Biden has specifically spoken about it. He had one of his grandchildren send him
Mm-hmm.
photos,
Yeah.
pictures of 200 cops in riot gear for Black Lives Matter. And you may have seen the memes from the editorial cartoonist of the Capitol Police actually rolling out the red carpet for the Trump uh, soldiers who came and led the insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it is stark, it is striking. I think that it's problematic. It didn't just start. We've known we've had a problem with police and brutality and reform and disparity for some time. It plays out every day. I don't think I'm exaggerating. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Not a week goes by when there's not an incident of a police shooting or an incident of police brutality against a person of color in general and Black people in particular. And so it's glaring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's time to do something about it. We're sick and tired of being shot. We're sick and tired of the disparity that is in front of our faces, that's on camera, on video, and to then speak to us as if we don't see what we see, experience what we experience, and feel what we feel, that there's time out for that. I believe that is a part of the motivation that drove us back to the polls in a runoff election to try to cast our vote.
Yeah.
Police brutality was on the ballot.
Yes.
Civil rights was on the ballot. Equality was on the ballot. You think we, in a nation with the history we have, would have come further than we have, but reality is showing us that we have not. So
Ab-
it's time for us to be about addressing this like never before.
Absolutely. And one can never deny the power of denial, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Denial will cultivate, the path to death, and deception, in any way, shape, or form, provides a direction to destruction, which is what has been going on, for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Denial and deception, fueled by fear, right?
Yes.
And here we are, you know, uh, a a tumultuous kickoff, on a fraudulent campaign, and a presidency that was devoid, of integrity, and here we are. And so, because of that, in any democracy, there must be transparency and accountability. And so, personal and political accountability, is going to be, critical, right now. And we hope and pray. We are watching, to make sure that that our elected officials do not, try to go soft or look the other way. Accountability is accountability. Like the King says, it is always right. It is always, you know, the right time to do the right thing, right?
Hmm.
So that's where we are. So this
Yeah.
whole thing about, accountability, any form of accountability is going to result in dividing the country. Well, you know, the country's already been divided, and
Absolutely.
the divider in chief is the one
Absolutely.
that's been perpetuating that. So you cannot, have a lack of action to the vision. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying? In terms of that. I'm going to keep you on and bring in, my brother, colleague, and comrade, Pastor William D. Smart. He's the president and the CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. That is organization founded by, Dr. King,
Hmm.
Ralph Abernathy, of course, C.T. Vivian, and others. He is of course providing some outstanding prophetic and powerful leadership for us, here in Los Angeles and
Wonderful.
in Southern California. And we are on the cusp of King Week. So before we get to the activities of King Week, Pastor Smart, let me just thank you for your leadership. We were part of, California Clergy for Warnock, and certainly, we've been able to mobilize a multiracial and a multi-religious coalition, to support that
Right.
whole move that took place. Briefly, just give me your thought on the victory in Georgia, and then I
Yeah.
want to pull you in so we can talk about what happened, also on, January the 6th around the insurrection, and then connect it all with, the life, legacy, and work of Dr. King. Let's go to Georgia first.
Okay.
Your
Thank you.
thoughts, sir.
Thank you so much for having me on the show this morning, Pastor Sauls. It's always an honor to be with you, and thank you for the huge work that you do in this capacity and the work you do in every capacity. You're always there on the social justice, the intersectionality of making sure we're doing the right things, we're in the right places, and things like that. So I really want to thank you. And Dr. Maywood, not Dr. Norwood, thank you for everything that you do to always enlighten our community. Yes, I'm glad that you emphasized the positive first about what happened in Georgia, because if you can imagine what we did, our young people sent over 1,000 postcards to disenfranchised voters, encouraging them to vote. If there was different types of trees and emailing and texting going on for the last 3 weeks from the Democratic clubs and here in California alone. If you could imagine that, and then we having the fundraiser, California Clergy for Warnock fundraiser. If you just can imagine us doing that on the outside, then you can imagine what was happening on the ground in Georgia. This was truly, there were different national and local organizations every day for the last 2.5 months. It was really one of the largest collaborative movements I have ever seen in Get Out the Vote activity, led by, of course, those sisters on the ground there in Georgia. And it was just beautiful. And that should not take away, Wednesday should not take away from the work on Tuesday and that victory for both of those candidates. It was a national victory, and we are real proud that we were just a little part of it, but it was a huge effort of those brothers and sisters getting out, and progressives and Democrats in Georgia getting out the vote. They did it, and they did it tremendously, and we can applaud. The future is going to be powerful in terms of voting, because we have turned the state of Georgia blue, and just it does not yet appear what will happen when the governor race comes back around.
All right,
and
now.
Stacy cranks it up. If she cranked it up for the last 3 big elections, 2 senators, and this and then the runoff, that machine is going to crank it up when it's time for her to run for governor again.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, come on now. You're getting ahead of me there, Pastor. Because I already saw some post about that, man. I'm like, all right now.
Yes, sir.
But we definitely want to just, lift up Sister Abrams. She is a shero,
Amen.
and as folks said, she's a kingmaker, and pretty soon the kingmaker, will be the queen of Georgia. Lord have mercy.
Yes, sir.
Let's get into just what happened, the attempted insurrection. We knew this was coming. The response from law enforcement. Pastor Norwood, you mentioned not a week, a day almost go by when we see how a disparity in law enforcement is being handled in this country. And one also need to mention not just disparity in law enforcement, but disparity in accountability of law enforcement officers, right? I mean, we saw what happened, out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, in terms of that police officer that was responsible for the shooting there, as well as around what happened, in Michigan, around the death of Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old, in the park, no charges, around that. So I mean, that's just kind of we caught up in the sandwich around disparity in law enforcement, right, and disparity in accountability of law enforcement officers, around this. Pastor Smart, just your thought, around that, because I know, the two of us, work a lot as clergy for Black Lives around this, but also, we work, both in city as well as, in the county around what's happening with the sheriff, in the criminal justice, sector, and how it affects us. And then we also know that there is, a law that is pending on the books called the George Floyd, law around policing and all of that, just to kind of look at some national standards. But just your thoughts, Pastor Smart, just around, the response of law enforcement and the need for personal and political accountability.
Well, if you look at they were number one something Wednesday at the Capitol. Some of them were taking selfies with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were letting them in.
Yep.
And you saw the initial barrier where they held that when they broke that barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Others on top is as if the word said, "Let them on in."
Mm-hmm.
And they did that. They opened up the gate, and then when some of them, and so the unfortunate thing, everyone says the same thing, including President-elect Biden. Had it been Black Lives Matter people, they would have, brothers and sisters, they would have been there would have been shooting. There would have been a much harsher response to them. This was, again, two things were at work here. It was white. It was the white supremacy in terms of, and also the feeling that they could do whatever they wanted to do. And the second thing was that law enforcement just simply stood by and said, these are some good old white folks, and we're not going to hurt them. We're just going to let them do and go as far as they want to, until it was obvious they had to stop. And it's said that a lot of some Congress peoples and others were opening up doors for them. How do you breach the Senate? How do you breach that with all that security? If you're white, you can breach it like that, even in an insurrectionist mob. And I appreciate you calling it what it was. It was an insurrection. It was not a protest. It was Trump's folks trying to overturn the government. Plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that. It was an insurrection. We gotta call it what it is. I mean, we've the politics of deception has just demoralized, the country, and
Yes.
and you and I know that deception results in bondage, and Scripture teaches us that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So we will need to speak truth, so that we can continue, to pursue, perpetuate, and preserve freedom. That is so important for us around this. Let's quickly bring in, Dr. King, and just, ask the question, what would Dr. King say, around, all of this? I'll start with Pastor Smart, and then I'll get to Pastor Norwood. And I know that, of course, Reverend Dr. Bernice King, articulated some words that I'll share, later on. But just, Pastor Smart, we're on the cusp of King Week. What would Dr. King say about this? And then I'll hear from Pastor Norwood, and then we want to get into, how SALC, of course, is programming around this for this coming week. Pastor Smart?
Yeah, he would say that it is the continuously jogging on of segregation and white supremacy is again running rampantly through America. in Trump. Trump was a no good president. I'm saying this, a no good president. He has continuously perpetuated white supremacy, going back to Charlottesville, even when he announced his candidacy, coming down the steps, talking about our immigration and Latinos at that time. So it's a continuation, and we would have to clean up, and we have to create a new America. We have to create a beloved community, and that we have to rid it of this type of segregation, this type of we have the law enforcement there, the army there, so you have the militarism there, and it's still that there was no word that Congress was not acting or talking about anything about the poor or poverty stricken. It has been talking about getting rich. Mm-hmm. And so those would be some of the ideas he would be lifting up.
Absolutely. Pastor Norwood, your thoughts. What would Dr. King say, to such a time as this?
I think Dr. King would have a lot to say. I think that his life and his words, his legacy still speak very powerfully to us. But I'm drawn to a particular quote that he gave in his letter from a Birmingham jail. He says, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. Mm-hmm. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, mm-hmm. tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be, until you become what God created you to be. Never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This mm-hmm. is the interrelated structure of reality. I believe that now more than ever. People in my congregation, in my community, are asking me if I have hope. I have hope because we're still here.
Yeah.
And as long as we have a pulse, God has a purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think we began at the level of commonality. Oftentimes what people want for themselves, we want for all people. We just must recognize that everybody is of equal value, created in the image of God, deserving the same thing at the same mm-hmm. place at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, that letter from Birmingham jail is one of mm-hmm. the foundational documents for me, for both, congregational ministry as well as, community advocacy. And that is just so key. And I do believe in what I call a spirituality of mutuality. Mm-hmm. And that even connects with how we are responding, to this pandemic, the deep sense of mutuality, and he challenged, individuality, while self-care and what an individual freedom has its place, in the end, we become what God has intended for us to be in a deep sense of mutuality. We picked it up as South Africans by calling it Ubuntu, right? In terms of
love it. Man. Love it.
But,
love it.
But as part of that spirituality and mutuality, let me read to you what Reverend Dr. Bernice King wrote. She said, "This is not abnormal," talking about the insurrection. As my father said, this nation was born in genocide. We have yet to earnestly address America's violent roots, its white supremacy, or its racism. With urgency, we must. If we do not, violence in so many of its forms will persist no matter who is in office. So that is, a powerful both affirmation but also call to action. And we know that during the commemoration of, the life and legacy of Dr. King, there are many events taking place around the country. But here in Los Angeles, in Southern California, we take it to a whole nother level. And so I want Pastor Smart to just talk about what's coming up beginning this afternoon, and we have flyers that we're going to put up, four that I know. We have something this afternoon, Pastor Smart. We got something tomorrow. We got something on the 14th. So it's always, not just, it's not about quantity, but just the quality
Yes,
of
sir.
what we are putting together. And I know when I was at home United Methodist Church, it was always a joy for us to kick everything off with the King breakfast. That interfaith breakfast. So just kind of laid out for us, Pastor Smart, in terms of what's going to be coming up, and all of that.
Today at 4 o'clock is our Founders Day, and it's a time when we reflect, and we're going to have George Gascon, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and our speaker is going to be April Verrett from 2015. Those dynamic people will be speaking, with Miss Verrett being the keynote speaker. But we're going to hear from them because the women of SCLC was instrumental in Miss Mitchell's campaign. The all of SCLC was working for Get Out the Vote for a while with the George Gascon, and then Miss Verrett has always been on the cutting edge of social justice issues. It's important to hear from them, but at the same time, not just locally but nationally, it's time we have to make sure now, as Dr. King said, when you get the people in, you have to push them to make sure their policies affect all. So Gascon is really talking reform, and before we could even before we could push him for policies, he's come forward. So now we're all in the mood to just protect and support him as what he has come out with these major reforms.
Yeah, and it's so key. It's so key that we have it's accountability and also having their backs. So
we have to start off. They have come out with the right way, so we got to have their backs right now. And then on Monday we're having economic development. We're talking about one of the things we want to do. We want to really begin to bridge. As you know, from the very beginning in 2013, I always talked about the growing wealth gap. And so we're kind of addressing the growing wealth gap. And Dr. Sauls, I like to, even though it's not out, I'd like for you to be the moderator of that program tomorrow, if you can. And we'll talk about
this is the economic forum. We're going to put that flyer up as well, because you and I know that that economics is so integral, into how we do this work, right? So we're going to put that flyer up about the economic empowerment, event that's taking place tomorrow. So tell us a little bit more about that, Pastor Smart.
Well, we want to develop ideas of how we can close that gap, economic wealth gap. For right now, it used to be for every every white person's families, their wealth was 125,000, and the average black wealth gap was average black wealth was 5,423. That has changed now. The Pew Foundation and others are saying it's actually down to, our wealth is down to 2,400 and something, and others are saying less than that. We need to address that. I've been wanting to address that forever, Dr. Norwood. And so this time we have some people, our chair of our economic development, and other people who are going to be involved in this discussion. And then from there, there's going to be 2 or 3 strategies that we're really going to push this year as we move forward in this special year. It's a new day is our theme. And also we're going to use last year's, the pandemic really affected us, but we're really going to use last year of building that community, that Dr. King talked about.
Okay, great. And then on the 14th, it's a new day. That's going to be our interfaith breakfast, and I know that's going to be a powerhouse in terms of
we have some dynamic clergy. We have some Brother Saphir. We have our Jewish sister from Orange County, who's always on the edge with us. We're going to have Pastor Thomas with us. So the new NAACP president from the San Fernando Valley, Heather Miller is the rabbi that's going to be with us.
Yeah.
So all of those, but the keynote is Mr. Van Jones, and he's always on the cutting edge, always saying. So just you have to sign up for that. It's free. All these events are free. And on Tuesday we're working with black women for black women for wellness, and we're going to do a policy and women's political awareness and Black Girl Magic, what they have done, what needs to happen as there's seats available, and there's using that power and talking about what the governor did not do. So all of that will be out there on Tuesday. On Thursday, like you said, the breakfast. On Friday, our MLK Young Dreamers for Justice, they will be having a speak out program 7:00 that evening, and then a little dance after that for them. But they're going to be talking about how the pandemic affects us, what they can do. They're going to be talking about what this new year, what they plan to do as just individuals and then collectively. And so that's on Friday. On Saturday, I think we're not going to do anything because we're going to be supporting the empowerment conference.
Right.
And so but usually we do something, but we're chilling because of the pandemic. We're not doing everything. Then on Saturday, we're working with Black Clergy for Black Lives in conjunction for the program at down in
Skid Row.
Skid Row
and Lamert Park.
At Lamert Park, then at Lamert Park, looking for the Radical King program, as they call it. And then on Monday is our we're going to be doing we're going to be doing Monday morning, we're going to be doing a type of service project. We're still working that out. And then that evening at 7:00 is our gala. Now, the good thing about the gala is it'll be virtual, but at the same time, we'll be delivering meals. We'll be delivering the dinner to everybody that has brought a ticket. And that's really working out pretty good so far. But it's exciting that we're, for the first time, I've always had to have it at SCLC has always had it at a hotel. But this year, because we're not at a hotel, the exciting thing there is we could use an African American caterer. So, Brother Norwood, you want to go on and get your ticket because we will be delivering to the addresses, and one or two of the corporate partners who will not use the table, we're going to be delivering them to selected homeless enclaves like we always do, because that's been a new mission of ours during Christmas and New Year's. We have fed different homeless enclaves, and that's going to be through our Hurting and Hungry and our Poor People's Campaign, SCLC Poor People Campaign. We'll be developing a safe strategy to allow other ministries to get involved with the delivery to the houseless enclaves outside of the Skid Row area where they're really growing. And that's something that Dr. King would be speaking to us
Absolutely. Always keeping it real and relevant. It is going to be a packed week. Please let us know where that dance is going to be on Friday night. I know the dancing will be safe distancing, so I don't know how we're going to dance the slow songs.
No. It's going to be a virtual dance.
Kind of stay far
It's
away.
going to be a virtual dance.
Okay. I'm just checking now.
Yeah, you got the support. Everybody out there in listening, you know why Dr. Sauls say that one of the greatest dancers I've seen is Dr. Sauls. That brother can dance, and he likes to dance.
Hey man, that's the African enemy, man. You gotta go with the rhythm, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And also that idea of just delivering the dinners, not just to folk who've registered, I think that is just an excellent idea. And yes, Pastor Norwood, I think Postmates or Uber Eats do deliver in Atlanta, so we'll make sure that you get, you get your meal. So there you have it. Thanks so much. I want to close us out, Pastor Norwood, just with 30 seconds, final words from you around how this year both tumultuous and momentous. Just some final words, and I'll ask the same of Pastor Smart.
I loved your use of the word Ubuntu. I
Mm-hmm.
love this sense of community that's taking place here through technology nationally, and we're connected globally. Let's stay connected in terms of staying woke. An election is coming again in 2 years. Accountability begins today and every day forward. And a Mandela.
Yes, I wear it too. There you go. My goodness. Don't get me started, brother.
Yeah.
All right, Pastor Smart, 30 seconds.
We
Your word up.
just it's a year of accountability and it's a year of push. We can't let, now that the Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, we don't need to wait. In the next 2 years, we need to push for everything because our people are hurting. We need to right the wrong in America right now. So we will be pushing all three entities of government to make the changes we need to make now.
Absolutely. And no compromise on the pain of our people, because people are in pain right now. No compromise on the hurt of our people. Let us be as bold as we need to be, emphasize possibility, and accountability. That's what continues to push us towards the destiny that God has for us. Thank you so much. This has been Faith Without Borders. Always a joy, a pleasure, and honor to be your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. I want to thank Pastor Monty Norwood from the Bible Way Ministries International, Atlanta, Georgia, and Pastor William Smart, President S and CEO of the SELC here in Southern California. Let us continue to keep on keeping on. We keep the faith, but not just that. Let's also spread it. God bless you. Peace out.
Peace. God bless you. Thank
God
you.
bless you.